I think you get to whatever number that is for you, you get to a spot where more money just, it does not make you more happy. And it's a bummer, like you're saying, to get there and go, wow, like I'm more free, but I'm not like fulfilled. I'm certainly not fulfilled. So I think you get there and realized, wow, like it's not all like money driven or finance driven. So I don't know that anybody I've talked to even says, man, I'm a 10 out of 10 if they're being honest on happiness, because there's always stuff coming at us different directions. I think it's just, if it's tied to money or a number, man, you're never going to get there, dude. Like never.
So here's something I've been thinking about. When you're starting a business, there's no confusion about your purpose. It's to make money, create stability, and take care of your family. But then one day you kind of get there. You've created that stability, you've created that foundation, and suddenly the thing that was pushing you forward, it disappears. And that's what we're figuring out here on the other side of enough. I'm sitting down with entrepreneurs who have hit their goals, but they're still searching for something more. We're talking about what business excellence really looks like on the other side. Let's get into it. Well, hey, thanks for setting aside some time. I know you're a busy guy.
Oh, no problem.
I'm excited for your podcast. I've seen you promoting it. I'm excited for the legacy that you're going to have with your kids. I know your vision for the podcast is a little bit different, much more longer term than mine is. Did I send you... I might not send you anything.
That's the plan. You know how it is. All good plans, right? You never know. Kind of like land. The kids are like, man, Dad, land's boring. I don't want to take over the land empire. So you never know.
Yep. True. Very true. I think you know the heart behind this podcast. We actually talked about it. We covered a lot on your podcast a few months ago. And it's really we're just asking a lot of the questions that men ask in this season of life. It's almost, I don't want to boil it down too simply, but it's almost like midlife crisis for successful entrepreneurs. Like the type of questions that kind of go through your head. And that's why I'm excited to interview guys like you and Justin Sleva, because I feel like you guys are a little bit ahead of me in the timeline. And you guys have gone through a lot of the same seasons, and I think it's really fun to just talk, and might as well press the record button while we're talking and sharing our thoughts. It's almost like a fireside chat, like a campfire.
Yeah, I think that's probably people's favorite part, right?
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Why don't you give background, share with the listeners who don't know you, who you are, your family, and all. I want to know all the projects you have going on with business and where you're at right now with all of that.
Yeah, I'll life rewind you to how, why we are where we are, how we got here, some of what changed. But really for me, I think I always had the desire to own my own business, and maybe more than own my own business, it was more about control my own schedule, my own day, my own life. And in my early 20s, had some traction with house investing. Then the Great Recession came and humbled me and exposed me probably what I didn't know. And so that thinking I was going to leave the workforce or corporate world and be an entrepreneur, I had a promising start and then was derailed really quickly and had to kind of retreat to the W-2 and really lean on that and lick my wounds for a long time, and struggled to find a business or a business model that could replace my salary. So I got trapped from 25 to 35 in the workforce. Yeah, I started out in telecom, so now everybody's pretty current with data centers like Amazon, Facebook, Apple, these massive like server farms and data centers. I used to travel around and build those out. Pretty much in the western states. So I traveled 200, 300 plus days a year for 4 or 5 years.
From like age 25 to 30?
So 20 to 25, I did that while I was investing on the side. And then when the recession happened, 2008, I had to take like an operations gig, a lot less out of state to state travel, but just a steady, dependable paycheck. I got married, entered that season of life where like I just got married. I needed something dependable. I didn't want to travel as much or out of state, but still the whole time felt like there was something out there beyond the job.
Yeah, I remember both in the Army and my corporate W-2s, sitting there thinking, this is so inefficient. I could make this way more efficient, but nobody cares. Nobody cares because there's no incentive to save money.
Yeah.
And then when you work for yourself, like you could be as efficient as you want. And then I think now, definitely for me, but maybe for you as well, there's areas of our businesses that we know that we can make more efficient. It's just, we just don't care that much. It's
Is it worth? Yeah.
okay, what's the effort? Yeah, is it worth the effort? Okay, I could start this new project to totally revamp my CRM system and it'll make me like 15% more efficient. But man, that's like a 2-month project. So,
Yeah,
okay,
I know
so
you make those decisions all.
right. There's always ways to improve, and you can't say yes to all of them. Okay, let's continue that timeline. So age 35, you left the W-2, and
So
did you jump right into land?
I think I'm like 34, and I always felt like real estate was the thing. But at this time, like I'm really like not just knee deep, head deep in like bigger pockets, trying to find the avenue. So did some mobile home investing, right? And then I come across land, and yeah, I started. First, we started actually buying at online auctions and then reselling on eBay. So that's how we got into land, was buying cheap lots at auctions, county tax auctions, and then selling them on eBay. After I did a couple of those, then we started trying to figure out how to control our own deal flow and got into direct mail marketing. But yeah, I started essentially just a side hustle, really. That's what it was. Hopes that it would turn into something, but it started as like a side hustle with flipping land. And then for me, it just, I had traction and I really enjoyed it. And I recognized, hey, this could be a side business, which is a lot different than just a side hustle for some extra money. And then I just leaned in on it, went all out with the idea of let's replace the job income and then become a full-time investor.
I think you're the first land guy who got started in auctions that I've interviewed. And to me, that's so fun because to me, that's like the Wild West. Like you have to bid and you just don't really know what you're going to get. Is there one deal? What's the first deal that kind of broke your brain and really changed your mindset?
I bought one for $586 and sold it on eBay. Sold it on eBay, 30-day auction for $5,000.
Wow.
For me, although that's not an life-changing amount of money, like the ROI and the amount of, we're talking 10, maybe 12 hours involved in the deal. And so to make about $5,000 for me made me real, oh my goodness, like this, why don't I do this about 100 more times?
The thing so I had a similar one where I bought it for 1,700 and sold for 17,000. And I don't want to say I got lucky because I don't know if I believe in luck, but I was definitely kind of like the blind squirrel that found the nut.
Yeah.
And you think, okay, that was a half-hour phone call.
Yeah.
Plus like another 4 20-minute phone calls. And then it took me a half hour to do the deed and closing. You do the math and you're like, wait a second, I just made like $5,000 an hour.
It's not a bad hourly rate, huh?
But then that's not fair because it took 6 months of like learning and prep time to get to that point.
Yeah.
How do you I still struggle with this now, where I tell people that I work 10 to 30 hours a week, but I realized recently it's probably way more. It's probably 40, 50 hours once you include all those little things I'm doing, all those little text conversations, all those little phone calls. Like this podcast, am I working right now or am I just talking with a friend?
Exactly.
I don't know. You can go crazy just trying to figure out how much you work.
You quit measuring when you change. There's a really good book. Robert Kiyosaki wrote a book called Cash Flow Quadrant. A lot of people know him, Rich Dad Poor Dad, but the Cash Flow Quadrant, when he talks about essentially categorizing as you move from like the employee to self-employed to a business owner to investor, this puts businesses or income in quadrants, but it also is a great way to explain like how people think. And when you're in that employee, that E quadrant, you talk in terms of like overtime, hours worked, you measure these things, right? And when you move into even self-employed or business owner, you're generally not clocking in, clocking out. You're not measuring your inputs because like you're building your own empire. So you don't feel as obsessed about making sure that's a fair trade for my inputs for outputs. So that's a good and bad thing though, because you'll throw 100 hours at the business sometimes and not quantify it. Am I making enough per hour? But yeah, it's just a mindset shift when you go to work for yourself. You're no longer thinking hourly.
And it's so satisfying. And so we're in Osaka right now. And actually our friends just left like 10 minutes ago. Right as we started the podcast, they left to catch their bus because I think one's flying back to Moldova, one's flying to South Korea. But they were staying in our Airbnb for a week. And so they got to see me work, like to see what my lifestyle's. And it's like, there's no set time hours. It's just random throughout the day. I'm either here for 5 minutes or I'm here for 3 hours. And they made a comment. They said, because they both have W-2 jobs working for European company, and they both commented like, Drew, like it was a Sunday morning at 9 a.m. and I was like messing with a spreadsheet or something. And they're like, Drew, you're working on a Sunday. And I'm like, I guess I am. I guess it's Sunday. I didn't even know what day it was. I just know this needs to be done. And now is a good time to do it. And it's kind of, you have a son, so maybe your daughters do this too, but you take an 8-year-old kid and you get him a Lego Death Star. They're going to spend all weekend building that thing, right? And then nobody says to that kid on Monday, hey kid, you spent all weekend working. What's up with that? Just because you know the kid's having fun. They're building something that they enjoy. And that's how business, for the most part, if I was coaching someone, that's how it should feel about 80% of the time. The other 20%, like, it's going to suck and be very unpleasant. But for the most part, you should be building something you enjoy.
Sometimes the suck is on the front end, getting the flywheel turning, like the inertia of standing up a business and start. They all suck, even if you're passionate about them, if we're honest about the work we're doing. Because when we start, we got to wear all the hats, right? So we're doing the things we don't just get to pick and choose and do the parts of it we love. As we kind of delegate and elevate ourselves in the business, we get to hand off these things that like we don't like to do, we procrastinate on. So I feel like you get more passionate about it when you get to be more selective what you're doing. But I think the early days, there's just a lot of like pure like motivation. You're excited though, and that's what drives you. That's what energizes you. Is for me, like it was building up enough income to leave my job. So that was like the first milestone, was becoming a full-time real estate investor, leaving my job. And we had to have a number, like there had to be a number to get to leave the job, but the number was never like the goal. The goal was really like, we need this to cover everything, but ultimately what I'm aiming for, the goal was like to be time rich and to have that freedom, that autonomy of like just controlling my day, my week, more so than, hey, I could make 2x or 3x what I do as a salary if I build this business up. My idea was more like, no, I want freedom.
I'm glad you said time rich, because I hear that Justin Pichet said that, and I've heard that with my other guests. And I don't know, my pushback on that is, at least for me, I became time rich probably 2 years ago, and I went crazy because I didn't know what to do with my time. I don't mountain bike for fun. I don't have any hobbies.
Do you have enough kids? Maybe you don't have enough kids.
We've been trying. We have 2 kids, 6 and 3. And right when the 3-year-old turned 3, she started talking in full sentences, and life got really easy overnight. Because the kids, they stopped fighting. The 3-year-old stopped having tantrums. And so life just got really easy. And we're definitely trying for more kids. But
what I would say is, you enter those seasons of life. For me, the time, it was like, the kids played sports. So I got to, you know what I mean? I want to take them to practices. I want to take them to games. We've got multiple kids in sports. As far as filling the calendar on my end wasn't hard,
so
but it's more.
Not bored, sounds like.
No, I'm not bored. When I started, I'll tell you though, the first month when I quit my job, we took 30 days, Drew. We did like a loop. I think we covered like six states. We did a 30-day vacation. And went and visited family, went to the beach, took the kids to some baseball games, and really enjoyed, like, I did no work for 30 days other than maybe answer a text or an email here or there. But I would even say like maybe that first 9 or 10 months after I quit my job, I took the foot off the gas and let what I had built just come in. And just, it took me about a year to honestly recharge and just enjoy myself doing nothing. If I wanted to have a beer at 10 a.m., I'd have a beer. It was like, you do whatever you want. Want to go to the gym twice in the day? Go to the gym twice. It's like it's your day, you own it. But about somewhere around that 1 year mark is where all of a sudden like the ambition kicked back in, and I'm like, okay, this could be pretty easy, like self-employment, or I can like reattack this and build and scale it as a business. But I slacked for a solid year, man.
Let's talk about your businesses, and then we can hop into some questions. So you have probably 3 or 4 active businesses going on, active machines that are turning?
Yeah. So we have 4 number of products or services under kind of each business, but the main thing has always been the main thing. And I think that's probably the biggest takeaway for people, right, was the land company. Flipping land investing is all the opportunity has came as like adjacent opportunity from that. I started out with our land investing company. That was just it that first year. Like I said, when I went full time, I was working 50 hours a week in the day job, and I was putting in After that point, I had it down to 12 or 15 hours a week for my land company after I'd built it up. So when I left my job, I only had 12 to 15 hours a week, probably where you're at now, right? 12 to 15 hours a week of real work. So I found myself like in forums, in communities, helping and answering questions, and I would probably spend that much time helping other people out, and just through helping some people with campaigns, lining people out on how to pick markets, how to run campaigns, how to send offers, paying it forward, joint venture opportunities came about. So somebody would reach back out to me and say, hey, Travis, the campaign worked beautifully. I got this under contract. It's worth $100,000. I got it for 50 or something. Do you want to go in on this together? Either I don't have the 50 or my wife will kill me if I use our money. You joint venture with me. So I found some opportunity with joint venturing before coaching. But I was really coaching like for free, just helping people. And we identified opportunity there. And then what I realized was, man, legal, like for liability, these things need to be separate entities. If you're funding people, that shouldn't be in your land company. So that kind of opportunity evolved there where we started funding and then we formalized the education. So those ended up being like two companies, was an education and more consulting at the time, consulting education business, and then a funding business were really the next two companies that we started above and beyond our land.
And they're all symbiotic.
Exactly.
They all feed each other, which is, I talk with Ajay a lot about like shiny object stuff, shiny object businesses, because we're always thinking about, it'd be fun. I don't know if I'm supposed to share this, but he's been like really researching payment processing businesses. And he's, it's so cool. You get a little sliver of every payment that goes through.
Yeah.
And I have my own set of shiny objects. And I think both him and I concluded that if you are going to chase a shiny object, it should be a symbiotic business model that feeds what your existing projects are going on. And I think yours do that really well.
They do, and that was not by chance. That was intentional. I actually read, it had to be a decade ago. Grant Cardone has a book, I want to say like the Wealth Creation Formula or something like that, but he talks about this, and he talks about how first, when you start a second business, it shouldn't be a big stretch totally outside of what you're currently doing, right? So I run a successful land flipping company. That doesn't mean I should go start a car wash, right? Two different things. There's not a lot of transferable skills, and also the leads from one don't feed the other. So we made that decision where we realized, hey, doing what we do best, and this is common in I think a lot of industries, when you become like a subject matter expert in your industry, you start like consulting or speaking, right? So that's like the coaching and consulting, right? And through that come opportunities and leads like to fund deals and joint venture. But you're right, they feed each other, and none of them are like running out and buying a movie theater or something that has nothing to do, that I have no business doing because I'm not skilled in that. So yeah, I think sticking to what you're good at and they're all built around your main thing makes a lot of sense at first.
I do want to ask you, so I have people reach out to me and they're in that season, the hardest season in probably most businesses, but definitely the land businesses, when you're like 6 to 9 months in, you spent a ton of money and a ton of effort, but you haven't really made much money yet. And you're just in the hardest season, right? And usually those guys have a W-2, and so they're working essentially 2 full-time jobs, and it's just the hardest part. I could have started coaching, I could have started multiple times, but the reason I've resisted doing that is because I just feel like I would get so wrapped up in their success, and I would be really bummed if their business is not going well, and I just feel like it would be almost like an emotional distraction. How do you compartmentalize that? Because you coach, hundreds of students a year, and some do really well, some do okay, and some go nowhere. How do you handle that?
No, you're spot on. First thing I'll address, like you said, like people struggling months 6 to 9 in a business, I think couldn't be more accurate. Somewhere around 6 to 10, 6 to 12, whatever, like the second half of your first year, I would say is the biggest drop-off point. Okay, because like when we're getting started, first we're slow at things, we comp things slow, it takes us more time to do anything new, right? So there's like this learning curve, and then we got to get the marketing machine going, and then we start out, we're not any good at converting leads. We might have generated them, but we're not good at lead conversion. And that takes a little time to develop that skill. So you're right, it's not uncommon to find yourself 6 months in and have leads, but not conversions.
Right.
And you have expenses, and the business is like front loaded with expenses because you do all this marketing, and especially in a buyout and flip and resell model, like all the expenses are on the front end and you don't see any profits till probably, I was talking with John Newth, right, who came through our coaching program about this, and that's what he said. It was just like you're in your own head those first 6 months. And then all the efforts starts acquiring properties around the 6-month mark, starts selling them at 3 months later, which would be like 9 months in. And then months 9 through 12, it's just like bang. But if you'd given up on that, it's the whole 3 feet from gold thing, right? If you had given up, all that effort and all that money you had sunk in would be nothing. So I would agree. First, I would say you're spot on. That's the toughest stretch. Year one is just as tough. But like emotionally as a coach, yeah, I do. That's why I had to start doing less one-on-one, because at the time, but two, I am vested, man. I truly am. And that's what I tell people is you can get your coaching anywhere, but like I am vested. And because my wife works the business with me or our businesses, she's acquainted with every one of my students and where they're at. So there's situations where I'll be like, gosh, it's killing me that so-and-so's got all these leads, but no deals. What am I missing? What do we need to adjust? You know what I mean? So we'll go on a walk. We'll walk the dog and same thing. I'll be like, hey, this person's struggling with this. So yeah, it absolutely does. You become vested in people. But the flip side to that is like you share in their wins. You know what I mean? So I've got a client tomorrow. I'm not celebrating it yet because like the closing's tomorrow, so the funds haven't hit his account. Yeah. But like barring something crazy happens, he's going to net $124,000 on a deal that we funded. Like that type of impact you have in somebody's life, you know what I mean? That's major impact, and somebody remember that forever. So when you help somebody, it's just so transformational, man. It's just such an amazing feeling to know that you've had an impact in their life. And they're going to remember that for life, that as we get so far into the business, it just we become numb and desensitized to the transactions. So like I tell people with coaching, it's like I get to share in like people's first deal, people's first really big deal, that excitement. I get to be a part of that. I'm a deal junkie, so I get my fix from that.
Yeah. I was actually with John Newth in Golden, Colorado when his first big deal hit. He got the wire, and it was basically like equal or slightly above his annual salary as a firefighter. And that kind of thing, that just breaks your brain. Like you can't ever unknow that afterwards.
No. It's the whole matrix red pill. Once you know about it, like once you're aware of this, it's really hard to ever look at a job the same again.
And for the listeners who aren't in the land business, that kind of deal we would consider home run, and that unless you're specifically hunting, those are probably once or twice a year kind of events.
Once a year, I would say. Yeah, setting expectations. Yeah. Exactly. That's the great podcast story deal, but it's not build your business going to happen the first month or two.
Yeah. Yeah, and all the smaller deals are the bread and butter that pay the bills, and then the home run is fun to talk about, but we don't ever want to inflate things. This podcast actually isn't a land podcast. It's entrepreneurial in nature, but there's times the land business is very hard. Like 2024 was a very slow year. I made a third of what I was expecting, of what I'm projecting, and it was still many multiples higher than my W-2. It was still 5 times more, but still like it can really mess with your brain when your income is so variable. It's like trading leveraged commodities. I think you traded before in the past, right?
No, I avoid trading because
so you've never traded.
No, for me, that's why I resonate so much with land. Is it is tangible. I still have the same amount of dirt, acreage, fence posts when things change. When I quit my job, like at that point, we were way beyond proof of concept. So for me, man, I pushed in all the chips, Drew. Like I cashed out at 401ks. I cashed out everything. Yeah. That's what for us really we started using outside money in addition to that, but we pushed everything in on land, and I pulled everything from stocks.
I think it's necessary to do that, not from a math perspective, but actually from a mindset perspective, because when you have all your chips on one bet, not one bet, but like on one project, it forces you to commit, right? Yeah. You know that it's you either going to make it or you're not. Versus if you keep chips on the side. You don't do it before you've done a deal. Keep in mind, we're 2.5 to 3 years in, or 100 plus deals. So yeah, it was like when you know you're sitting on a winning lottery ticket type situation versus just, hey, a burn the ships type situation, and it's a gamble. But we burn the ships like 2 or 3 years in once you know it works.
Yeah. But no,
Exactly.
the
Well,
deal
hey,
flow is hard. The deal flow is hard to know how much you're going to make. But I think the takeaway is like, no matter what industry you're in, it's not even land. Like just being a business owner, like the first year is always hard. In fact, most people that come to us that have owned businesses, when I tell them that you probably won't be profitable, you might not be profitable till several months in, 9 months, like most business owners are like, we'll be profitable year one. Like true
right.
business owners are blown away
Yeah,
that you're going to be like in the black by the end of year one
right.
because they know and they've ran other business. They just expect that first year to be all expenses. But when you haven't owned a business and you approach as a side hustle, you need quicker traction because you don't have as much time or money to throw at it. So I think it's just
Yeah.
being in the right headspace, setting expectations. It really helps if you have those expectations set right versus hearing a podcast, getting excited and then being bummed if your first campaign you don't strike gold.
There are ways to start the land business with no money, and you can just do all labor based. You can basically just cold call and use free data. But that's a whole nother rabbit trail. Let's get into some questions. I sent a bunch of these to Josiah. He's going to be on here in a couple weeks. Let me pull them up. Okay, so I have two sets of questions. One is ones that I came up with. And it's questions like, how would you define happiness? Is it the same as contentment, fulfillment? And then we talk about balance. We talk about family time versus focusing on your business and sitting at the dinner table and totally zoned out thinking about business stuff when you should be focusing on family. But with you, I actually want to go through, I have a different set of questions that actually Kendall and his AI came up with.
All right.
I'm Kendall's first personal branding student.
Okay.
He's helping me launch this, and I'm so thankful for that. These questions are a little bit more wordy, but I think they get at the heart of what I'm trying to discover with this podcast. Let me send a couple your way. So, how would you define making it? And then, how do you find meaning after you've made it?
Yeah. All right. So making it, in my opinion, is just really personal and really subjective. So
Yeah.
like there's guys, I have buddies even who never went the marriage route or kids route. And when you like talk about success, like their image might be like scotch and cigars and suits, you know what I mean? And big titles or, you know what I mean? Corner office type thing. So it's really unique, I think, to people who like, what do you picture like success as? For me, like the making it part was, man, I don't want to grew up like struggling and scrambling and broke and surrounded with poverty. So one, it was like, I know this is not the world I want to live in that's chaotic and unpredictable. So I knew like I've got to get like in a state where financially things are predictable and I'm comfortable and I can do the things I want and put my kids in an environment where they thrive. But the making it was really like more about not a dollar thing at all. It was just like financial, really like freedom or security to not have to worry constantly about money and then to have just complete control of my schedule, to take the kids anywhere I want, whenever I want, like vacation and not think about cost or anything like that. So mine was just so much more like freedom based, I think, than financial. And I think that's an age thing. So if you ask me at 24, if you asked me 20 years ago, Drew, it was like, I want my name on the side of planes and buildings and like picture Trump, picture Richard Branson. That was like 25-year-old Travis with ego and different ideas of making it. So I think making it, it's personal and subjective, but I also think if you ask every 10 years, if you ask somebody, it might change, right? A little bit. But for me, by the time I started our business, I was in my early mid 30s. I think I knew where I was at, who I was, and what I wanted. And for me, it was just about having financial freedom, but being really time rich to be able to do whatever I want and not have anybody, not report to anybody after having been in the corporate world.
That's what I would say is like most people's definition, including mine, is basically you've quit your W-2, you make many times more than your W-2, and you have mostly you have control over your time. And I think that's why I started this podcast, because you've done that, I've done that, and I don't know about you, but I don't feel happy every day.
Yeah.
It didn't solve all my problems. I'm probably above average in terms of happiness, like a 7 out of 10.
Yeah.
It was the answer, but not. So like, what's next? You know, what now?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that for me, and again, it's different for each person, but for me, I'm faith-based. So I'm a Christian, I'm a believer. So that plays a huge role in my life, like for not living like temporally day-to-day material stuff. Yeah, we've got really nice vehicles, we've got a nice house. So it's not that we're not material. It's just like, I don't place a lot of value on that, or that's not tied to happiness. So for me, it really is like about like bigger picture.
Yeah.
Having a bigger purpose than if it's measured by like money and mood and daily, it's like your emotions will take you like down a river without, or you're lost. Your emotions will take you everywhere. So I think for me, it's like just my wife is my compass, and then my faith also just keeps me going during the tough days when everything's not sunshine and rainbows. But yeah, I think that happens all the time is you like go, if I get to a certain number, then I'm going to be happy, like the 1%. And then you get to the 1%, and you're like, that's really not that much, maybe more. Right. So I think it's easy to fall in the trap of more. And after you get to a certain spot, like it's just diminishing returns. You know what I mean? I really do. I think you get to whatever number that is for you, you get to a spot where more money it does not make you more happy. And it's a bummer, like you're saying, to get there and go, wow, like I'm more free, but I'm not like fulfilled. I'm certainly not fulfilled. But that's where I think things like even like today, like when I look at my calendar, like I get to do this with you. 10 years ago, if you told me like, hey, here's what your day looks like, you know what I mean? Here's your day today, right? You get to go to the gym, you get to go on a walk with your wife, right? You get to run your son to practice, you get to do a podcast, pop in and check the CRM and see what the stats are. Like I would have been like, oh, that sounds like the perfect day. And then now it's a Wednesday. So I think you get there and realize, wow, like it's not all like money driven or finance driven. So I don't know that anybody I've talked to even says, man, I'm a 10 out of 10 if they're being honest on happiness, because there's always stuff coming at us different directions. I think it's just, if it's tied to money or a number, man, you're never going to get there, dude. Like never. But for me, because I've shifted from it being about me to the family, the kids, I find more purpose in that than I do when it's about me. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that makes sense. So when you're at these kids' sports games, because I'm not at that season of life yet, you're like locked in and watching them the whole time, or are you thinking about business, or are you on calls, are you texting? Like how much are you mentally present?
So when I started, when we talk about balance, when I started, I would tell people, when you're starting something new, throw out the whole everything needs to have balance. Like you can't start anything new with balance. Balance is like down the road, right? Balance is like year 3. Like first year or 2, you got to be like all in, obsessed, I think, to make anything extraordinary. But yeah, in those first couple of years, I lived and breathed it, and you couldn't turn it off. And talk about not being present. I'm looking at my phone constant. I'm thinking about it constant. No way, man. I was not present for our first 3 years. And that's probably my biggest challenge, that I've grown a lot in that. But it starts with that awareness of like you going, hey, I'm not present and I know it. You know what I mean? I'm not dialed in. I'm physically here, but I'm thinking about this stuff. And I think you just got to acknowledge it and be aware of it. And then for us, it becomes less like, there's just a shift for me where what is truly more important to me? And then I got to be intentional. And I go, if this is more important to me, it's put the phone in the pocket, zip it up, and look at the kids. I don't need to be checked. There's plenty of work. The work will be there. But no, it's an intentional thing. It doesn't come natural. I'm very much somebody who's I don't dabble, I'm all in, and I become obsessed with things. So being present was always one of my biggest challenges. It helped a ton, Drew, though. So my wife does the business with me. She started it with me. So it's not like I have to shut it off when I walk through the door, or, you know what I mean? It's just interwoven into our whole day. So she's on board with it. She understands. And if she didn't, honestly, I don't know. I would do a horrible job at being present or having balance if she wasn't involved in the business. So I cannot counsel the other guys who aren't fortunate enough to have a partner in it.
Yeah, my wife, I'm on the other extreme with the marriage thing. She has zero interest in it, but it actually works out because like I don't consult her with any decisions. I just make the decisions, and she runs the household. And being so compartmentalized is nice sometimes because food just shows up in front of me. It's good food. Like I didn't have to make the decision, and if we're gonna go to dinner, I don't even care where we're going. And in fact, when we get to the restaurant, she orders for me because she wants to try 2 different meals. Yeah, and I don't care what I eat. And so I think there's pros and cons to being on the other extreme. I think the worst place would be to be in the middle where your spouse like cares and is involved, but then they like pick and choose which decisions they want to help you make.
Present, but not. No, that's just it. I'm about like when I started it and we talked about this, we knew I was going to be doing the lion's share of the work and was like, all right, I realize this is going to cut into a lot of family time. So it was like, all right, I got to create time because it can't cut into family time. Or if this is going to be a negative thing, if the kids and your wife associate this new venture with, I lose time with dad, right? Or date night goes away, I lose time with dad because he's doing this land thing. So for me, it's like, all right, I got to suck it up. So I'm going to wake up earlier. I'm going to stay up later. And those are the hours that get thrown at the business, not like skipping a ball game or something to work the side hustle. So for me, that was burning the candle at both ends for a couple of years, but it was like necessary so that they didn't have that burden and didn't have a negative association with it.
Yeah. Something interesting. So my dad, he worked an office job, and I have very good memories of him being very present, and he showed up to my cross-country meets, and he just whenever I saw him, he was 100% present. Of course, this was before cell phones. But I talked with my mom a few years ago, and she's, no, he always working. And basically what was happening is when he was gone, I just didn't think about him. And when he was around, like he was fully present. And what's happening now is with me is I am with my kids way more than any other dad. I'm around all the time, right? But when I am around, they see me working. And even though I'm spending more hours with them, and I would say more quality hours with them than my dad, they feel like I'm always working. And it's just because they see me home. And I just wonder,
you don't have their full attention because you're working at home. So I think that's, even if it's your own business or just a work from home as an employee, I think everybody struggles with that. We have the same issue. It's dad's available, mom's there, you're available, you're accessible, you're here. If I can see you, then I should be able to come up and talk to you about things, regardless if you're on a Zoom call or a podcast or whatever. So yeah, I think that's normal, man. When I started, I really remember struggling with, because I was big on reading all these books and self-development, and I would read all these entrepreneurs have these amazing like routines, and it's like these guys get up at 4, they drink like their kale smoothie, and then they meditate, then they journal after they meditate, and then they go for a 10K run, and then they start their day. And I struggled with trying to like emulate all these people before I realized like my day looked different. My morning might start with a kid might get sick and then come running in the room middle of the night and jump on my bed. And I'm like, now I'm up at 2. So how does this work? So for me, I started to quit trying to like emulate those other, the single guys that were like entrepreneurs and writing books about their amazing routine. And I'm the married guy with kids at a different stage. So I kind of have to go, what does this look like for me? I need to build a routine, but I don't have to model it after Tim Ferriss or somebody who's living a different life than I am. So I think sometimes you see these images or you see this framework and you think like that's what your life should look like. It's no, we got to adapt it to like our reality, right?
I spent years trying to perfect my morning routine. Even when you get it down and you're waking up at 4:30 and you're checking all the blocks, you find, at least for me, I found, okay, I'm checking the blocks on paper, but now my marriage is non-existent. We're just roommates. If you wake up at 4:30 and you're exercising, then you do a full day of using your brain, like you're tired by 8:30. You put those kids down, I would fall asleep with the kids and then do the same pattern. And so then the marriage was starting to suffer. So then I'm like, okay, I want to prioritize my marriage. So then I would stay up late and then still wake up early. I'm getting 5 hours a night. And then the business starts to suffer because you're tired all the time. And it's basically, there's no way to get an A+ in every category. Right? And I think that's okay. I think the answer is we need to have priorities. I had Eric Wong. Do you know Eric Wong?
No.
He's Dave Deniston's business partner, and he's actually the one that got me into the land business. He's an Army officer a couple years ahead of me, and he was saying that you will go crazy if you try to get an A+ in every category. And the priorities, he puts God first, then family, then business. And once you stack them in order, if you missed your journaling that day or I guess if journaling is praying, then that's number 1. But my point is if you missed your kale smoothie, it's like, whatever.
That's at the end of the day, what I think is that you have to, so much of our ideas of things are modeled after other people, sometimes celebrities, sometimes authors, like entrepreneurs. We model these things after. They should inspire us, but at the same time, you've got to adapt it to your life, and you're spot on. You're not going to, dude, who would get an A plus in every, you're a liar if you're telling me your wife would grade you an A plus, every one of your kids would grade you an A plus, your employees, you know what I mean, your clients, like, come on. So we just want to be, like you said, you want to prioritize and be intentional, but when you give yourself some grace and you recognize that you're not going to be firing on all cylinders every day and everything's not perfect, like, I think that's reality. You know what I mean? I think that's the struggle with other people. You base stuff off other people, and it's kind of like comparison, comparing marriages, comparing jobs, comparing houses, cars. You fall into the comparison versus enjoying what you're doing.
And what we do, because most entrepreneurs, we want to be the top performer in every category. And so what we do, at least what I found I do, is I choose different people to compare myself to in different categories.
Yeah.
Ben Pijanowski has like bigger muscles than me, and he has better diet. And then like Eric Wong has better quiet time than me, and Callan Faulkner has a better business than me. And I like whoever's the best performer in that category, I compare myself to them, and I just create this like totally unreasonable expectation on myself, and that's a guaranteed way to go crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think we're intentional, like with us, what I'd say, even when we knew our business, it worked, it was growing, it was scaling, we hit a spot where we're really deliberate, and it was like, okay, either we go get like a brick and mortar, like we turn this into almost a brokerage and we add team and we add a layer. Like, what does that look like? And then my wife and I, we talked through it and it's, oh, that sounds terrible. Like, we'd rather live in this sweet spot here where we don't have to add a layer of managers. We don't have these headaches. So for us, there's these, I don't know, opportunity costs. That doesn't mean the business couldn't grow to 100 people, or we couldn't try to go for $100 million or something if that was a target. But it's for us, what's the cost? And the cost is, that's going to consume me. It's going to consume my time. And that's not what either one of us are going for. But I think, man, it's just, that's the nice thing about it. It's your business. You get to design it however the heck you want, but with the goal of being like as close to happy, right? Or as fulfilled as you can be.
One thing I think about is, you know how like they say people on their deathbed, they never say they regret. They always say they regret working too much and not spending enough time with their kids. I think, like, I get that. And I feel like I've done a pretty good job the past few years of prioritizing my kids. But sometimes I wonder, will I regret not, I don't want to make it about working harder, but will I regret not trying to build something bigger? You know? And maybe that's a lie I'm chasing. I don't know. Because I'm in this point right now where with Rooster Capital, when I use my own money to fund a deal, it's super easy. I make more and I don't have to talk to anybody other than the operator. Versus when I arbitrage money, when I arbitrage money, I make half the amount because I don't borrow with debt. Typically, I give the money source half my cut. Yeah. And so I make half the amount. It's twice as much work because now I'm talking with a money partner. And it's usually 4 times more stress because I really want the deal to go well so their money is used.
That's a good point. When you said more stress, that's true. You feel the pressure of using other people's money, and who knows how like high maintenance they are. That's why I'm like, if you want to hand me some money for something, don't be texting me every week or calling me. You know what I mean? You got to set those expectations because you're right, especially new investors. It might be reaching out and it becomes more work than it's worth. But no, I can relate exactly what you're saying.
So what I'm finding is 5% of my income is from my own money, or not from my own money. 50% of my income is from my own money, because about half the deals I fund myself. The other 50%, am I doing the math right? I think it's 2/3 and 1/3. But whatever it is, most of the money is from my own money, and it's way less work. And a small minority is from arbitrage money, and it's 5 to 10 times more work. And so I've thought about, what if I just stop arbing, I just do less deals, and I just make 50 to 75% of what I'm making now, and we make some lifestyle changes. We cut the BMW, Mercedes leases, maybe move to a lower cost area. I think about that, and I think obviously the stress would decrease and I'd be able to spend much more like mental time with my kids. But I wonder if I made that move, Travis, would I regret it in terms of like professional excellence? Is that me throwing in the towel, or is that me like making a move that's best for my kids in the future? I don't know. And
Well, I
maybe
think
nobody knows.
none of it's like final. I think I used to struggle with stuff where if something didn't work, and I was like, man, I'm a failure. That was a
Yeah.
failure. Like, it was like some like permanent status, or I'm going to be tagged or stained with failure. And the reality was like, that failed. It was a fail. I can start over again later. So I think just looking ahead at all the years ahead of you, like you go, maybe that's the season you live in the next 5 years. That's how you roll. And then at 5 years, you go, boy, the kids are in school. I have more time, whatever. I need to scratch that itch. I want to build those professional relationships. And then you go that other way. I think when you make the decision, you're not committed forever to it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You're committing for the next couple years with the decision, but I think you can adapt or adjust with those at any time. But so
That's true.
Mike Michalowicz, who wrote Profit First, before that, he wrote a really good book called The Pumpkin Plan. If you haven't read it, it's amazing on Audible. Mike's probably my favorite author that like reads his own stuff because he's just a great storyteller. And so it's fun to listen to his books, even if the books aren't that relevant. But The Pumpkin Plan is really about how the premise is like you see these huge pumpkins at the fair or something, and you go, how in the world do they grow a pumpkin that big? And he kind of tells the story how like a number of pumpkins grow on a vine, right? To get one pumpkin that big, you got to kill off the other ones, right? You got to clip the other pumpkin off so you establish which one is growing at a faster rate, and then we kill off the others. It's the Pareto principle packaged as a pumpkin story, but the 80-20, like 80% of your headache and stress is coming from 20% of your revenue or arbitrage deals, so you kill it. That's what the book is about, is like recognizing that and killing off that 20% that's causing you 80% of the headache. Or when I was in telecom, we'd have call centers with these large fiber optic companies I work for. And I read this book and I wasn't thinking yet about my land business. I was thinking about at work, our call center. And like 80% of our like tickets, trouble tickets, would come from like the 20% of customers. And it was usually those like big B2B customers that brought all of the revenue. They usually weren't the ones opening the majority of the ticket. It was all these little mom and pop, tiny little customers. And so we were buried in all these trouble tickets, and they brought the least revenue, the most headaches. So I read this book. That's what I thought right away was, man, if I were CEO, I would fire these. Fire these. But I think with what you're doing, and that's all it takes is that, like, some people just live in it and repeat the same year, though, that introspection or what you're doing, that's how you end up with something that you want to own, end up with a business that you love and want to own.
I think part of us, because we learn these habits in school. I don't know about you, but I was always the one to cram for a test, like a half hour before the test started, and I'd do pretty well. And we learned to live in this cortisol infused, like last minute stress life. And so when the stress is not enough, actually, we secretly crave it because we want the fires to put out. So, yeah, I think the math is right where if I make half the amount of money from my ARB deals and I'm ARBing, half of my deals are ARBed, I think the way the math comes out too is 2/3 of my income is from
that makes sense.
From my own money, and 1/3 is from ARBed, right?
Yeah.
So I could cutting 33% of my income, I would cut 90% of my stress. But then it's what do I do? It seems so boring. Like nothing's on fire and
I'm not out there meeting investors and trying to build up this folio. Yeah, exactly. What am I doing? You're doing a podcast, man. That's what I tell people when you look ahead. Like, that's where the things we really love. I love this stuff. I love talking shop and talking business with people that I like. I like writing. Like the book, like for me, was a fun thing. I could see in 5 years where all I'm doing is like writing books and podcasting. Like you said, when you go, what's next, or what do you do? Just more of what I really like to do, and all the things that I find myself procrastinating on, I should probably start to eliminate those one by one. And whether that's a company or it's a service, I should probably get rid of those that you're not loving.
I have these guys in Canada that they probably send the same deals to you, but they send me these deals, and I know they're shopping around, and it always takes me like a week to underwrite them, and really, I just don't want their business. And these guys are great, very nice guys, but I just don't want to fund their deals. I don't know why. And so I've learned that if it's something you are procrastinating on, like you need to look at why, and maybe it's just not something you need to delegate or just something you need to say no to at the front end so that it just doesn't sit on your to-do list for 1 to 2 weeks.
Yeah, and knows that like no can be a complete sentence. And no is a learned thing. It's an art. When I was a lot younger, you want to please everybody. As I get older, I care less, and it's just because we've got more exposed to more business, more clients, more things, like you just become more efficient. And no is wildly efficient word. So
Yeah.
that's like my wife, like if somebody will ask us socially to do something, and I know we've got something that day that's not going to work, I'm like, nah, probably not. She's look over at me. We could say maybe, and we'll see if we can make it work. I'm like, no, I'd rather not disappoint. I'm like, probably not, guys. It's like, I'm looking at the time. I don't think we could make it from this side of town to that. Just probably a hard no right out the gate. And she'll just be like, oh my gosh, you have such a low social IQ. And I'm like, no, I just like, if it's off my brain and I don't have to think about maybe or should we or how do I make this work all week, and I know it's probably a no, let's get it out there.
When you say no, people respect you more, right? And
Yep.
I think a lot of times our scarcity mindset, at least for me, sometimes I think if I say no to these people, they'll never come back. And what if I want their business in 6 months?
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think that's scarcity mindset. And when you tell people no and you set up boundaries, I think that makes them respect you even more. So when you do it in a polite way.
Yeah. Yep. All right, Stu, you got some more AI generated questions for me here?
Yeah, let me go through. These are actually really good. I think Kendall's done such a good job. Him and I spend multiple Zoom hours refining these. Okay, here's a good one. We've already talked about it, but this summarizes the idea much more. How much risk and challenge do we need to feel alive?
Yeah, man, that is, I enjoy risk. So and it's probably not good to have a partner or a spouse that's the same as you. You need a balance.
Yeah. Right.
My wife is not. I'm the like double down and we win. I go, okay, double down again. No, cash your chips, walk away. So I enjoy risk to an extent. If I like stable and predictable recurring revenue, like I'd like to know that I'm not going to lose my house, the bills are covered. But with the extra, man, I love to take risks because sometimes you can have like X type returns, sometimes 100X. I enjoy it. Yeah, absolutely. But each person, man, risk. I was talking to somebody the other day, a professional, fantastic job, well-respected guy, a professional. And he shared with me just because we were chatting, he's like, what you do terrifies me. And I'm like, what do you mean? Yeah. And I just can't imagine like not knowing a paycheck will be there and then knowing 1 month to the next, even if there's no ceiling on it, that would just terrify me to not have that, to not have like the health insurance that we have. There's just so many unknowns for him. He's, man, it just, and I said, some of it's like learned, and you grow as you step outside your comfort zone, you grow and you're more comfortable with more risk. But everyone's got to take a little bit. If you ever want to do anything outside of the norm, you got to take some, but some of us are like worse than others, right?
So we moved to LA a couple of years ago, and our church community, there's a lot of highly paid W-2s there. They work for Google, Facebook. What's that rocket company? Not SpaceX, the Blue Origin. These guys make a ton of money, but layoffs, I hear talk of layoffs on a monthly basis.
Yeah. As
a business owner, very rarely would your income go from 100% income down to zero. But as an employee, like that happens every few years for some of these guys. It's very normal in the tech space to get laid off. And so one minute you're making $400K a year, and the next you're down to zero for 6 months. And to me, that seems even more scary. But back on topic.
People don't know that until you've been through it. I've been laid off in the tech sector. My wife has been laid off.
Yeah.
Both within 3 months of each other, total different industries, lost our jobs, our high-paying jobs, right? So after that happens, after that balloon's kind of popped, that security that people think they have, and it's an illusion, and every 2 weeks the paycheck's being deposited, so you feel good about it, but you better have some set aside, because when that's pulled out from under you, all of a sudden you think differently, and you never view like corporations or companies the same again, or your paycheck again once it's pulled out from under you with very little notice. It's just not as safe as everybody thinks, regardless of what level you're at.
Yeah. Agreed. The question that I went through, how much risk and challenge do we need to feel alive? So your answer and also like my answer, they're all usually in a business lane. Like we think about that in business. And I had someone tell me, Drew, you just stop taking risks in business and start taking risks. Get a dangerous hobby like mountain biking or something. And I thought about that because I think that would fill, for a lot of us, we were all the ADHD kids in school that couldn't sit still. And I think that would fill the need. But the question is like, how soon until we like crash and die?
Yeah.
Because I bought a BMW 5 Series with some upgrades. And I find that when I'm in a season where I feel bored, I drive that thing because there's these mountain roads in LA where you can go pretty fast, and if you're on the mountain road at 7 a.m. and it's a road where commuter traffic is not on, you can really take that thing. You can be as aggressive as you want,
Yeah.
and there's parts where if you go off the road, you will literally drive off a cliff.
Yeah.
And I've thought to myself, like, okay, this is so dumb. I'm like risking my life with no life insurance just because I'm bored.
Yeah.
There's got to be a better way. Maybe paintball or something. There's got to be a way to feel
Paintballing.
high risk where it's not actually dangerous.
Yeah.
I
Where
don't
it's not
know.
potentially fatal.
I feel like snowboarding and mountain biking and motorcycles and fast cars, all that is like literally dangerous, but
Yeah.
maybe paintball is the happy medium to where it feels dangerous, but it's actually not. I don't know.
I think like when I was in my 20s, like I went skydiving multiple times. I bungee jumped. There was a couple of things that was
Right.
like more like that kind of risk taking or thrill seeking.
Yeah.
I think, man, the older you get, especially when you have kids you want to be around for, you start to be a little
Yeah.
more calculated with those personal risks. But I can understand, yeah, stepping outside the comfort zone and doing something new. Hey,
Yeah.
man, public speaking, being on this stuff, that's a stretch for some people.
That's
Just
true.
standing and talking in front of others, giving a presentation, that's more terrifying to some people than bungee jumping.
Yeah, definitely for me. I actually purposely, so it's March. I would say about a year ago, I decided, hey, I really want to intentionally put myself in front of people because that's what scares me. And if it scares me and I know I'll grow, then that's what I need to do. And so I was on stages probably 3 or 4 times last year, and it was scary. Like, I can't eat that morning. Of course, they all went really well, but I think public speaking is a very safe. Yeah, you're not gonna hit your head on a rock.
People are terrified of it and should be, because like anything like new and uncomfortable, it brings it to a different level. But you're right, it's just like the other things. You worry a lot about it. You think about how it's going to go. You spend more time thinking about it and worrying about it, and then it's over like that, and you do just fine. And then you go, why did I spend all that unnecessary energy and time worrying about it?
I think it's like narcissism. It's like narcissism concealed. We think about ourselves so much, and in reality, nobody cares.
Yeah.
If you're on stage and you had the booger on your nose or something, like nobody's gonna think about that a year later. But you're gonna spend the rest of your life like thinking how horrible of an experience that was.
That's just it. You spend a lot more time worrying about what other people think than they are spending time thinking of you, no question.
They're too absorbed with themselves to think about your own flaws. All right, let's go through one more. We talked through a lot of these. Yeah, we've gone through a lot of these. Oh, okay, here's a good one. So this is something I came up with. When I think about starting a new business model, usually like shiny object kind of thing, I have conflicting tension between 2 truths. Truth number 1 is I know deep down inside I'm very capable of being successful at almost anything because I've done it before. But also truth number 2 is because I've started businesses, I know how much work and stress they are, especially at the front end. I'm almost less resistant to start a new business now because I'm no longer blissfully ignorant.
Yeah.
So it's almost like, it's strange. I know I'm more capable now, but I also know like how much work it is. And so do you ever think about that?
All the time. These are decisions like, do I want to start this? Am I just scratching that itch or checking this box so I can say that I've done this? To prove to myself that I can do this. Like a software company, right? We started like, why start a software company, right? When we have our other businesses. And it was just something where like, I felt like I know I can do this. I know it's going to be a lot of work. Same thing, same conversation, same dialogue going on. And then you go, relative to the other businesses, it doesn't make sense. It financially doesn't make sense. The inputs, I can't make sense of it. But I'll always wonder, is this going to nag at me, is kind of what I ask myself. Is this going to nag at me later? Am I going to have regret wondering? So that's what my wife's great about, is like saying, are you going to regret this? Because if you're going to regret this, or I'm going to hear about this later, and you're going to wonder what could have been, go after it and we'll know. Good, bad, or whatever, we'll know. If I kind of look at it like that, if it's not going to bother me, it's more, I know there's opportunity and I'm curious is one thing. It's another if I go, man, this is going to nag at me if I don't give it a good college try. So that's how I make that decision, more so than like time or revenue of the businesses.
I have this project. So I have a roommate from college, not a roommate. He lived across the hall, and he's a Pakistani citizen, a Saudi resident. So he was an exchange student at my school, and he's just got a brilliant mind for business. And he's in his 30s. He's still single, so he's got a lot of time. And he runs a couple different AI businesses with dozens of employees. And so he's doing quite well. But he always wanted to start a business with a college friend. And so him and I are We're actually going to China in a few weeks, and we're going to tour factories and possibly contract with a factory that will build our tiny home product. We'll slap our white label brand on top, and then we'll sell them to the Saudi government as they build all those. I don't know if you've heard of all these futuristic city projects they have in Saudi. So Saudi has essentially just realized, hey, we need to stop being dependent on oil. We need to switch from being an oil economy to a tourism based. And so they're trying to be like the next Dubai essentially. And they've allocated 1.5 trillion for the project. And so if we can cash in on just a mere fraction of that, we could be buying these tiny homes wholesale for $20,000, $30,000 each and selling them for 100 to 120. And it's the type of thing where the land business is more efficient and less work, but will I regret it? It just feels like such a fun project. Will I regret it later if I don't try it?
Yeah, exactly. That's how I gauge it too. That's the nagging question for me more than do the numbers work? And I think those questions are more second, third business type questions, because the primary business, like I tell people, even if you're not fanatical about it, the primary business has to be profitable and have great margins. That's what can like fuel these like cash flow lab, these other businesses we're testing.
It pays for the shiny objects. I just finished a book called Never Enough by Andrew Wilkinson, and they call him the Warren Buffett of tech. And he was saying for like multiple decades, his boring cash cow business funded all his shiny object stuff. And so I'm not planning on like dumping a ton of money but it is a luxury that we have where we have money to play around with, and it's okay if it doesn't work out because it was a fun project and a good story. Yeah, exactly.
That's exactly how I approach it now too. But the first one's should be boring and profitable, and then the other ones can be shiny and exciting.
Exactly. Hey, let's wrap it up, Travis. I think we've covered a lot.
Let me give you a book to finish with, though, okay? Because I think it's really in alignment with this kind of the theme of your podcast. Bob Buford wrote a book called Halftime. Drew, it'd be a great read for you. You're at a perfect spot in life, okay? And halftime, and that's really what the book is about, is like our second half of our life, and not so much like age-wise, kind of age-wise, but more about when you've made it, like you said, when you're established, and then you have all these questions you're talking about. What's next? Do I give? Do I start a charity? What do I do with my time and my money? And the book's called Halftime, though, and that's really the theme of your podcast, right? Is that we get to that point. Some people get there younger and earlier. It's more about getting to halftime in the game than like an age or a number, right? Some people get there sooner than later. But you ask yourself those same questions, I think, when you get there. What's the point? You know what I mean? What's the point? What do I do with my time and money? And then how do I get fulfilled versus like temporarily like happy?
And then what was the other one? Is Pumpkin Patch by who?
The Pumpkin Plan by Mike Michalowicz, the same guy that wrote Profit First, wrote The Pumpkin Plan, and that was the one about killing off the businesses or the customers or the products, right, that are consuming you but aren't bringing in the lion's share of the revenue.
I love it. I'll be sure to go through those. Any plugs you want to make? Any events you have coming up? Your own podcast, what's the link for that? And anything else you want to let the audience know?
The King Show podcast, you can find it on Apple or Spotify. That's probably the best. Yeah, the King Show podcast, and then people can always check out travisking.com. The podcast is linked to there. But other than that, you all know where to find me. I'm sure Drew will throw up a link.
Yep, or the editor will. Good stuff. Thank you, sir. It's
all right.
Always good talking.
Absolutely. Thank you. Yeah, and enjoy your, I guess we're calling it a vacation. How long are you over there?
A few months until May, late February to early May.
Enjoy your stay. All right.
Yeah, we're moving to South Korea in a few weeks, and then Taiwan after that, and it's good. I think my wife is the happiest when we're traveling, so it's fun to see her really enjoying it.
Lean into that, and then the hours in between things, you get to do stuff like this, man.
That's very true.
All right, thanks, Drew.
Alrighty, sir. Yep.
All right, that's it for today. I hope this conversation got you thinking and maybe even questioning a few things. And that's the point. This isn't about having all the answers. It's about figuring it out together. If this episode resonated with you, share it with someone who might need to hear it. And if you want to keep exploring these ideas, make sure to subscribe and follow me over at theothersideofenough.com. Let's keep the conversation going and see you next time.